Okay, so the question that I decided to do from exam 2 was question 2, and this question mainly focuses on facility layout. So if you're having trouble with facility layout, then you should just continue watching this video. So the question says to set up your bakery workspace with 3 sections, section 1, section 2, and section 3, each separated by a door, you need to place the functions administration, dough preparation, baking within these sections. You go between administration and dough preparation 40 times daily, between administration and baking 80 times, and between dough preparation and baking 191 times. Calculate the difference between the worst and best layouts in terms of doors opened. Enter only the difference in doors opened as your answer. For example, if your worst layout requires opening 400 doors per day and the best requires 200, then enter 200. So this question isn't really asking us what is the best layout. It's asking us to find the difference between the best layout and the worst layout, and what's the difference between that. So just make sure you're keeping in mind like what the question is asking, because it's very easy to just kind of like forget what the question's asking, even though you probably did it correctly. There's no partial credit on this exam, so just make sure you double checking what the question is really asking you for. Okay, so how I like to start it off is I'm gonna name administration A, and then dough is gonna be D, and then baking is gonna be B. So I like to see like which sections, how many steps takes to go from each section to each section. So to go from administration to dough preparation, I like to write it like that. I put a little arrow. It takes us, we go there 40 times on daily. Then between administration and baking, we go there 80 times a day. That was ugly. Okay, we go there 80 times a day. And then for dough preparation and baking, we go there the most times, which is 191 times. So the way I like to think about my layouts is basically the best possible layout versus the worst possible layout. So we're just gonna draw 2 boxes to kind of like describe our layout situation. So this is for like the best case scenario, and this is for the worst case scenario. So we know we have 3 sections, so I just like to divide the box into 3, because it's kind of like a realistic layout of what we would want our facility to look like based on our needs and how many times we visit a certain area. So the best way to think about it is, for the best layout, which sections do you go to the most, and put those together. That's literally how I do it. Like, so we know that we go to dough and baking the most times on a day-to-day basis. So the best possible circumstance would be if dough and baking were right next to each other, because it makes it easiest for us. We have to, it just makes it an easier process. So of course, if you go like somewhere a bunch of, like, if you're going to, like, let's say the bathroom in your house, and like you have to go through 10 flights of stairs or 10 doors, it's going to be very inconveniencing, and that's not the best layout. So you would want like your bathroom to be next to your room, or like, if you go to your bathroom quite a lot of times, you'd want your bathroom to be like, right next to you, so it's like not much of a hassle. So that's how I think of it. So whichever one is you go to the most, the ideal best layout would be those 2 being together, and then you could just put the last one at the end, which would be A. Then, so let's put that for layout 1. And then for layout 2, which is the worst possible scenario, you basically separate the 2, like the 2 that you go to the most. So D would be here and B would be all the way here. Basically meaning it's making it more of a hassle for you to get to the places you go to the most. So using the same example, and then I just put the A right there. So using the example, it's like, let's say you go to the house. Oh, let's say you go to the bathroom 191 times, but your bathroom is literally always, it's on the 3rd floor of the house, and you live in the basement. Like, that's very like annoying. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of think of it in that sense. So I like to also put my little doors right here. And yeah, so this is the best layout where the ones I go to the most are together, and the worst possible layout would be the ones I go to the most are farthest from each other. Okay, cool. So now I like to just write my little table. So I put steps first, then I put layout 1 after, and then layout 2, like that. And then I just basically rewrite the numbers that I wrote at the top right here, because those are the amount of steps. And I write it in the same exact order just to avoid any confusion. So 40, 80, and 191. So for layout 1, we're gonna look at layout 1, and how many times does it take us from room A to D? So it takes us 2 doors. We have to open 2 doors to get to room from D to A. So I just do times 2. So 40 times 2 is 80, because that's how many steps it normally takes us on a day-to-day basis. Then for A to B, in layout 1, it takes us only 1 door to get there. So I'm just going to leave that as 80. And then for D to B, they're right next to each other. It takes us 191 steps to get there, and it only takes 1 door. So we're going to multiply 191 times 1, and that's 191. And just to say it again, how we got 80 was we did how many steps it takes us, and we look at how many doors we have to get through in order to get to either, in this case, A to D. So it takes us 2 doors to get to A to D, so that's why I multiplied it by 2. If it took you 3 doors to get from A to D, you would multiply it by 3, and so on and so forth. So we're gonna do apply the same logic to layout 2. So from A to D, it's only 1 door, so we're just gonna put 40. So that'll be 40 times 1. This one, no. And a lot of people get this confused and start multiplying it by this. Only multiply it by the steps, because you're confusing. These are 2 different layouts. And then from A to B, it also takes us 1 door, so that's gonna be 80 times 1, so that's 80. And then 191 is from D to B, and in this case, it takes us 2 doors to get from B to B, so we're gonna multiply 191 times 2, and that gets us 382. Now, what we do is we add all of them together to see which one is the best layout. So for layout 1, it's a total of 351 steps, and for layout 2 is 502 steps, which makes sense because ideally, if you go to dough and baking the most amount of times per day, but you have a layout where those 2 are the farthest from each other, it's obviously going to take you more steps to get there, okay? And in the ideal world where you go to dough and baking 191 times a day, they'll be right next to each other, and then you would only have to walk or just go there 191 times. So that's why it makes sense that this is lower, because it's more convenient, and this is higher because it's less convenient. So now, since the question is asking us for the difference, we just take 502 minus 351, and we get 151. And that's the answer because they asked us for the difference. And as you can see, that's the answer right here. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, if you have